Hello friends, I hope you know that we've been running a series on modern drama and we focus upon the European drama in particular. And today's lecture by Professor Payal Nagpal, who teaches English in the department in Janaki Devi Memorial College, Delhi University. The playwright that we take today is the French writer called Jean Anouilh. And he's a legend of the 20th century French writing and the European writing, and famous for his writing and the dramatic skills. And most of his plays have been also filmed. And some of the superstars of Hollywood and England, presented important roles there. I particularly remember his play Beckett, about the saint, individual, English saint, John Beckett. I don't exactly remember the first name, but
Thomas Beckett.
Thomas Beckett, yes. And the other play, which is equally important, is Antigone. And Professor Payal Nagpal would be telling us about this writer, about his views, about his point of view, about the way he treats important themes of the present day period, as well as the historical context that he generally delves deep into. So I'll request Professor Payal Nagpal to give us a view of the man, of the writer, of the person with a viewpoint, and also his great, dramatic skills. So, Professor Payal Nagpal, may I request you to please begin your lecture?
Thank you, Professor Prakash. Today's lecture on the plays of Jean Anouilh. So, we will be discussing in detail Antigone by Jean Anouilh, a play that was originally written by Sophocles, and this play is adapted in a sense, and of course it's also independent given the times in which it was written. It is also, it stands as an independent play, and the original plot, of course, is from Sophocles' Antigone. So if you look at the years in which Jean Anouilh was active, so he was born in 1910 and lived just the other day till 1987, and was born in Bordeaux, in a very, very humble family. But his interest in theatre, his interest in drama is very, very important, and he was also secretary to the French actor-director Louis Jouet, and he was inspired greatly by the French dramatist Jean Giraudoux. His first play, the first play that he wrote, was The Ermine, and also there were other plays that he wrote, like Traveller Without Luggage, The Savage. These were like more contemporary plays, but what Anouilh is basically known for is, his adaptation of the classics. It's when he moved from the contemporary topics, like as in the straight on, to the more, classical plays, adaptations of the original classic plays. I think that is where he was very, very successful. And it is with the classic Antigone that he really established his mettle as playwright. He also wrote other plays that include Romeo and Jeanette, Medea, and this reworking, I think, of the classical plot was very, very well done, in a sense, by Anouilh. And as Professor Prakash pointed out, there is the famous play Beckett, also made into a very successful film. So it is famously said of his style of work that he rejected realism and naturalism and brought on stage what was called a certain kind of theatricalism. And where little is available, but I think we need to understand Anouilh's idea of theatricalism in the context of his plays, rather than moving ahead with any set definition of what theatricalism would really be about. It's important
for our benefit, could you explain the theatricalism? It's a new term you are using.
So this is a term that's attributed to the works of Anouilh, and though little is available in translation, and that remains a challenge. So my own understanding is that this use of a certain kind of intensity, poetry, imagery in the classic, of the classical period that's translated onto the modern stage. I think that is where he kind of brings in the sense of the theatrical, so to say. And of course, this is where he uses the idea of the myth and interrogates history through myth. So I think in modern times, one has to look at the connection between the use of myths and an understanding of contemporary history. Mm-hmm. I think one has to read Anouilh's plays for that. Mm-hmm. So if we move to a discussion of Antigone, Antigone is, as mentioned, an adaptation of the play that was originally written by Sophocles. And what's very interesting here is, and Antigone in that sense is a turning point in Anouilh's own career as playwright. The reason being that with this shift to the classics, but the shift comes at a very important point. Now, it's written in somewhere around 1942, and this is the time period which is the beginning of the occupation years, as they are called, the occupation of Paris by the Nazi forces. And the play is performed for the first time in 1944 at the Atelier Theatre. So if we look at the play, when it was performed in 1944, the reception was very, very divided. So there were people and critics who said that he's supporting the collaborators, that is the collaboration of the Vichy government with the Nazi forces, and there were others who said that he's critical of the same. Though post the time period when Paris gained freedom from the occupation by the Nazis, this is considered to be a resistance play. Now, where the play can, of course, be interpreted, and critics, of course, have interpreted it in both ways. What's important is the time period in which it was written and performed, and that gives us a very important cue to understanding how Anouilh, who said that he's not at all political, how he actually responds to the politics of his time by observing, by seeing what is happening, and he uses the medium of theatre and his craft to actually reflect the times. And for this, it is quite obvious that it would not have been possible for Anouilh to come out with a play that straight away spoke about the times. And so, this going back in time and picking up a classical play and adapting it to reflect the time to which he belonged is a very important point. So even though he did not state his political views, and he's interpreted both as having been critical of the Nazi forces or supportive of the Vichy government. So, but for us, I think Antigone speaks at many levels. One is, it goes beyond this, because one is the level of the aesthetics of drama, if we are to talk about theatricalism itself. And the other is, of course, there's the political context, and there is Anouilh's contribution as playwright to the reworking of the myth, the Greek myth. So if we actually look at the beginning of the play, we see how this also connects very well with, Bertolt Brecht's style here, the use of the chorus. And the use of the chorus is actually very, very Brechtian here. So if you look at this, these lines from the play, these people are about to act out for you the story of Antigone. Another thing she's thinking is this: she's going to die. Antigone is young. She would much rather live than die, but there is no help for it. When your name is Antigone, there is only one part you can play, and she will have to play hers through to the end. So we know the original plot. We know the original plot, how the play is actually, it brings with it the whole Oedipus cycle. So, Oedipus the king, Oedipus at Colonus, and then we have Antigone. So, Oedipus's daughters, we have Antigone and Ismene, and how, Antigone wants to give a decent burial to her brother, Polynices, how Eteocles and Polynices were at war, and where Eteocles is going to be given a proper state funeral, Polynices is to be denied the burial. So Antigone fights for this, and she of course has to, pay with her life for taking this decision. So now this remains the plot. But how is it that it is reworked? It is reworked at many levels. It's reworked at the level of language. It's reworked at the level of ideas. So just the very beginning, the way, if we look at the chorus, it's very, very modern. It belongs to the 20th century. And much as I said that this is an adaptation, it belongs completely to the 20th century. And we see, the chorus connecting with the audience with these lines that Antigone is young, she would much rather live than die. But there is no help here, because if your name is Antigone, there is only one part you can play. So this is right at the beginning of the play. And if the chorus has declared at the beginning of the play that this is what Antigone is going to be all about, then we already know that the plot is going to be borne out to its very end, pretty much the way it was in the classical text itself. So, but what is interesting is the way in which the chorus speaks to the audience here about what they are about to watch. So, if you look at the use of the dialogue, the prose, the language, it's different from the Sophoclean style. And what is very interesting here is, of course, a very realistic presentation also of Creon, who has decreed that Polynices not be given a proper funeral. So another very important factor is a new character in this play, which is that of the nurse. And Creon's presentation is particularly striking, and there are ways in which one can actually read into the way his character is developed. So if we take a look at the way Creon, the king, is presented, that grey-haired, powerfully built man sitting lost in thought with his little page at his side is Creon the king. His face is lined, he is tired, he practices the difficult art of the leader of men. Now, this is different, also from the classical text, where, Creon is the new ruler who rules by new fortunes that the gods have given. What counsel is he pondering? So there is ratification, there is validation in a sense of Creon as king. Yet at the same time, when we look at Anouilh's presentation of Creon, there seems to be a kind of complexity that he lends to Creon's character, and that is, in a sense, very, very significant. So here I'd like to request Professor Prakash to speak a little bit about what he thinks, especially about, the role of the chorus here, and this absolutely direct manner in which, I thought the chorus speaks to the audience becomes very, very interesting, and reminds us in a way of the fact that this is a 20th century play.
Oh, well, that's a good question to consider, because chorus is at the center of most of the Greek writing in the ancient period, and the chorus generally represented the audience. Here, as you have rightly pointed out, the chorus talks to the audience, and the chorus, whatever, is it a group that talks?
Yes.
So the group, represents, I think, the writer's point of view, which is different. There, there is a kind of a bridge between the stage and the audience, and that's what chorus is. But here the chorus is directly telling the audience that this is what they have to expect. And the other thing that I would say is that you use the important word there, that that word is a kind of quote from the original statement, that she might live, but she cannot.
She cannot.
And that makes it modern. And you rightly say it's a 20th century play. And I particularly appreciate the use of the word reworking. You all use both the words, adopted and reworked. Adaptation is there and not there, but reworking definitely is there. And Antigone for the Greek audience in the ancient period would have been a reality that was present, but here she represents a memory. What you call the myth, and the myth has so many elements to it, and those elements have to be separated and treated in such a manner that the play is shorn of the old trappings and starts appealing to the modern audience.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you that, this is a play, as I said, that it's a play that stands on its own. It's in that sense, it's an absolutely independent play. It's a reworking of the, original Sophoclean plot. And the play belongs pretty much, remains rooted there, uses the whole, cycle of the classical play, but at the same time remains absolutely rooted in that sense in the 20th century. And so there are a lot of indications, of course, in the dialogues itself that tell us that it belongs to its time.
And the other thing is controversial in itself, and Anouilh is not supposed to be questioned by the critics from that angle, because the World War had two aspects to it. One was when Nazis were actually getting support from indirectly from Soviet Russia. And later on, Soviet Russia had to go hammer and tongs at the Nazis. So what should the writer do? Initially, Hitler somehow represented a kind of anti-imperialist view, which represented the viewpoint of the British and the American colonialism, particularly, and also French colonialism. So maybe at that point of time, Hitler would be playing his game, and the left in the world at that time thought that they should work with him. But later on, Hitler proved his mettle in a different manner. So what should the writer do? The writer has to address the immediate circumstance, particularly as you say that the play was presented in the 1940s. So 1940s has two segments: the first segment and second segment. What do you say?
No, so this is actually, the play is interpreted and seen also as a response to the Nazi occupation of Paris. And that is where it is considered to be, is he collaborating, is Anouilh's representation of Creon, particularly in the play, is it, an assent to the collaboration of the Vichy state with the Nazis, or is it a critique of it? So that is where the critics are very divided. But post this, post the liberation of Paris from the Nazi hold, the play has primarily been considered to be a resistance play. So where, the Nazi forces have been resisted. But as I said, that I think to go too much into the response of the critics is probably not the lead. I think the lead is probably to understand that there's a reason that the playwright is picking up a classical plot and is reworking that plot and presenting it in the 20th century, because it speaks to the times. It speaks to the times through this particular medium. And the times are one of great difficulty, as 1942, the time that he writes is the time when the occupation begins. And I think Anouilh is kind of concerned with it and is trying to provide, I think, as, I would agree that not taking sides, but is, I think, capturing the moment. And that, I think, is for us, a very important takeaway point, especially from a play like Antigone. So I think this idea of presenting the conflict, there's a civil war, the battle between Polynices and Eteocles, and how, both really speaking killed each other. So when Creon sided with Eteocles and said that, he be given a proper funeral, he's also branding Polynices as traitor, somebody who's to be left for the vultures, to feed on. And so Creon says that the vultures and the dogs are to bloat themselves on his carcass. So this, of course, and then Antigone's resistance to this particular decree is what the play is all about. as mentioned, that there is a new character in this particular play, which is that of the nurse. And, I would like to dwell a little bit about on how, the play is in this sense, a standalone, a different play, because we see Antigone as a very well-rounded character, somebody who belongs to her time. And I think Anouilh has done this very carefully. For example, the new character in this play is the nurse. And the nurse is almost like she's like the mother to Antigone, and says that you spend your life making them behave, watching over them like mother hen, and running after them with mufflers and sweaters. So look at the language. The language is very modern, running around with mufflers and sweaters to keep them warm. And so here we have a figure of warmth and affection. This maternal bond that is established around Antigone makes the character of Antigone more palpable. It's in a sense more broad-based, and we're able to visualize her and see her in a very, very different light, in this particular play. So,
well, friends, we have reached a point, where Antigone can be discussed from 2 or 3 different angles, and Professor Payal Nagpal has told us about the plot, about important characters, about the problems that are addressed in the play, and the rationale of the play being written in a particular manner in the late 1930s and early 40s when it was produced. So for that, we have the discussion to carry on in the second part of the lecture that will soon be with us. Thank you.